It's a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new episode of Africa Today. Of course, our program bringing you all the latest news and events happening inside the African continent. Today we have a lot in store for you, and we start straight away with a look at some of the news making the headlines, going straight to Algeria's interim president, Abdelkader Ben Salah, that said in a televised speech that the country will be holding a presidential election on December the 12th. More details in this report.
Algeria's interim president announced his country will hold a presidential election on December 12. In a televised address to the nation, Abdelkader Ben Saleh said he had decided that the date of the presidential election would be Thursday, December 12. The announcement comes after Army Chief General Ahmed Iyad Saleh insisted that the polls be held by the end of 2019, despite ongoing protests demanding the creation of new institutions ahead of any elections. On Friday, Algerian protesters returned to the streets after Parliament passed bills paving the way for the announcement of elections. Demonstrators are demanding an overhaul of political institutions before any polls. Iyad Saleh earlier this month called for an electoral college to be summoned on September 15th so as to conduct an election with 19 days in mid-December. Last week, Parliament passed the two bills that would facilitate the announcement of a vote. Justice Minister Belkacem Zoaimati presented the bills on Wednesday, with both legislative chambers passing them within 2 days. The first bill proposed the creation of an independent election authority, while the second text was a revision of Algeria's electoral law.
More news, polling booths have closed in Tunisia, which is holding its second presidential poll since 2011. 26 candidates, including 2 women, are running in the election. Exit polls suggest an independent outsider named Kais Said and Nabil Karoul have done well in the first round of the voting. More details to follow.
Tunisian voters appear to have upended their nation's politics since Sunday's presidential election, rejecting established leaders for 2 outsiders with 39% of votes counted. Kais Said, a conservative law professor, and Nabil Karoui, a media magnate held in detention since last month, have an apparently solid lead over an Islamist candidate and seem set to advance to a runoff vote next month. Karoui has for years used his television station and the charity to present himself as a champion of the poor, while his critics describe him as an ambitious populist. He denies all claims of wrongdoing against him, including all tax evasion and money laundering charges, which kept him in jail on election day. A social conservative, Said's main focus is decentralization in a country where politicians in the capital have traditionally dominated. Official figures have shown that Said was on 19%, Karoui was in the second place with 15%, and the moderate Islamist Ennahda Party candidate was on 13%. In a radio interview on Sunday, Said described his lead as a like new revolution. An official in Ennahda said it would now focus on the October 6th election for parliament, which wields more power than the presidency. With a low turnout of 45%, the result underscored widespread frustration over the sluggish economy, high unemployment, poor public services, and persistent corruption. Legal questions over whether Karoui could take the oath of the office while in detention or whether presidential immunity would protect him are unsettled. A constitutional court to address such issues has not yet been set up.
And for our final news item, the Ministry of Investment and International Cooperation launched the website for Africa 2019 conference for the Invest in Africa gathering, set to be held on November the 22nd till the 23rd in the new administrative capital, of course in cooperation with the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Industry. More details to follow, and we'll be right back to take a look at a further in-depth discussion with our guest over the telephone. Stay tuned.
Ministry of Investment and International Cooperation launched the official website for the Africa 2019 Forum under the name Investment for Africa. The forum is organized by the Ministry of Investment in cooperation with the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Industry on November 22nd and 23rd in the new administrative capital under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Aiming to stimulate investment in the African continent, the conference will be attended by presidents, prime minister, and ministers from various African countries, alongside some 2,000 representatives of Egypt's development partners, businessmen, investors, and high-level business figures from Egypt, Africa, and globally. The website includes a speech from President Sisi towards the conference participants, welcoming Egypt's guests at the Africa 2019 Forum under the slogan Invest in Africa. In his speech, President Sisi said that Invest in Africa aims to explore new horizons in shaping a better future for the people of the African continent and achieving their development priorities within the framework of the ambitious African Agenda 2063. He explained that the African countries are taking strenuous steps towards achieving sustainable and inclusive development under the 2063 Agenda, and in this context seeking to build successful partnership with international and regional financial institutions that will enable them to achieve their ambitious development agendas. He said also that sustainable development was a necessity for the people of Africa, and it will be achieved with the further cooperation, mobilizing efforts, increasing trade, boosting investment, and promoting more private sector's participation, while emphasizing commitments at the highest political level of the reform efforts.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm now delighted to be joined over the telephone by my guest for this afternoon, Mr. Rauf Ghaffar, the political analyst. It's a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, my dear.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Rauf.
Thank you.
Now, of course, the Ministry of Planning announced that Egypt will be hosting the Invest in Africa conference in November in the new capital, as it said in its official website. Tell me, Mr. Rauf, the importance of this Invest in Africa conference as an opportunity to really increase investment in the continent.
Well, within the context of promoting business and investments in Africa, a series of such forums and such conferences have been going on, and they will continue going on, aiming to attract investors and industrialized advanced countries into investment in the continent of Africa in general, and of course in Egypt in particular. So it is always a good opportunity to have such platforms where projects are exposed, where countries can say what they need, and most of these forums and conferences are usually backed by the banks. I mean, African
investment
bank,
partners, yes.
Export-Import Bank, etc., which gives more weight to the project that to the projects that are discussed. I mean, when a bank is involved, means that a study, in a short word, it can mean that this is a bankable project. So this might represent a bigger opportunity for investors or international institutions.
Mr. Rauf, how important, in your opinion, sir, is it to increase commercial exchange between African countries, to increase trade, and what are the investment opportunities, in your opinion, available for investors in the whole of the African continent, really?
Well, I mean, we all know Africa is very rich, full of resources, you name it. I mean, mineral resources, human resources, all sorts. And unfortunately, either they are not utilized, they are not exploited at all, or very poorly and badly exploited. So it is high time that they look for serious partners to come in and help them exploit their resources in a better way.
Yes.
And of course, this will reflect on both sides, either by using the resources, or maybe adding value to such resources by manufacturing them or semi-manufacturing them. And this will, of course, be very helpful for the African economy in general, and for the bilateral relation between Africa and foreign companies.
Mr. Raouf, are you with us?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Mr. Raouf, in a speech on the website, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that the Invest in Africa conference aims to achieve the continent's development priorities. In your opinion, sir, what are these priorities, especially at the current time for Africa?
What is?
The development priorities for the African continent.
As I said, the infrastructure is a priority. The exploiting of resources is another priority. I mean, as I said, I repeat myself, Africa is very rich and very badly exploited, and they need somebody to help them exploit it in a better way. President Sisi has been always, I mean, regardless of Egypt being, of course it helps, being on top of presiding the African Union for this year, but I mean, President Sisi and the Egyptian administration has always expressed keenness and interest in Africa, particularly. Yes. So this started before Egypt presided the African Union, and will continue, I'm sure, after this year. But in any event,
yes,
it is of utmost importance, as I said, first of all, to link the African countries between one another, to
yes,
integrate the African continent. You name it. I mean, you're talking networks, internet networks, you're talking energy, you're talking yes, maritime transport, you're talking highways. I mean, all the infrastructure possible from one side, and leading to attracting capital and attracting investments coming either from financial institutions like the African banks, or the partners from the industrialized world. And this has been the conviction of President Sisi.
Yes.
He has attended, as we know, only this year, so many meetings, the G7, the G20, China, etc. He does not spare time and effort to try and get the best for the African continent.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Raouf, also the conference will really be a platform and an opportunity for the African partners to meet, to discuss Africa's, persistent challenges and identify viable solutions to some of the challenges facing investment in the continent. How important is this kind of communication between African business people to identify challenges and come up with viable solutions?
First of all, I mean, continuous contact between African countries and industrialized countries is of extreme importance. It has to go on non-stop. So this has to continue from one side. The other side, as I mentioned, this is of mutual interest. I mean, it is the primary interest, for instance, for the European countries, and I'll give an example, reduce the illegal immigration. And one big reason for the illegal immigration is the high rate of unemployment in the continent in general. So establishing sustainable development projects in the continent will help create job opportunities, will help the young people, and we know, of course, between two big brackets that President Sisi is giving a very, very, very big importance to the youth and to women particularly. So, I mean, establishing such a project of sustainable for sustainable development is essential, not only for the African countries, of course it will help develop them, but as important to the European countries to employ the African youth and prevent them from immigrating. So this is one example. On top of that, I always repeat myself, so many resources available, and they represent a very big attraction for investors to come in and partner with the different countries and use the resources together and make mutual benefit between the two.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Raouf, the gathering, the sessions and the gathering in the conference will include several discussions, some related to the role of women, for example, in economic development, as well as young entrepreneurs. Now, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi always stresses the importance of the women's role in society, whether it's economically, socially, or politically, as well as the African youth. How important are these sessions, in your opinion, Mr. Raouf?
I mean, we have seen this through the different conferences and forums that have been held over the last years. The importance and the priority is given to the youth, to the empowerment of women, and this, needless to say, how women are important in their communities and in their societies. But again, the movement of empowering women has taken a very, I should say, unprecedented priority.
Yes.
And I am sure that within the same context, the investments should be directed to, first of all, youth entrepreneurs, and we have seen that entrepreneurship has been discussed and sort of taught to a lot of youth in Africa.
Yes.
So I mean, the future is for the young generation. They will be leading their countries. They will be the managers of different businesses, etc., etc. So it's very important to teach them and train them. And this is exactly what we have been, as a country, as a president, calling for. And this is what we are always stressing upon in all the previous and probably the following forums.
Indeed. Mr. Raouf, also the need to diversify African industry and focus on different things, not just the traditional, whether it's agriculture or mining, etc. For example, projects to do with energy, information technology, the development of these areas. How important is it to diversify and branch out into new opportunities for African countries?
It's very good to produce raw materials. It's very good, again, to plant crops and sell them. But the more important is to add value.
Yes.
So establish investment, establish industries mean that we add value to the raw material or to the product. And therefore we can sell it at a higher price and make more money and develop ourselves quickly. In order to do that, we need energy, as you rightly mentioned. So we have to, we need, of course, information technology. We need know-how. I mean, these are things that will speed up the exploitation of our resources. And, of course, these are available in the industrialized world, in addition to investment. So if the two join hands, I'm sure that the benefit will be mutual and everybody, it's a win-win situation that nobody can deny.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political analyst and our guest for this afternoon. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and for all your insight. And that's all the time we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we wrap up today's edition of Africa Today. My name is Angie Meher. Many thanks for joining us.